The regular meeting of the Capital Long Range Improvements Committee will now begin.
Okay, and so normally we say as a reminder, this meeting will. Okay. Go ahead. Okay, so good afternoon. My name is Jeffrey Strand. I'm the chair of the Capital Long Range Improvement Committee. Before we begin, I'd like to note that this meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota Statute Section 13D.021 due to the declared local health pandemic. I will now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Thor Adam.
Present.
Zachariah Aiden.
Present.
Jonathan On.
Present.
Beard.
Present.
Bernstein. John Bernstein. Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Present.
Brown. James Brown. Luke Cunningham.
Present.
Scott Engel.
Present.
Amity Foster.
Present.
Eamon Gallagher.
Present.
William Graves.
Present.
Kai Goodmestead. Kai Goodmestead. Lisa Hustad.
Present.
Jones.
Here.
Matt Kazinka.
Present.
Richard LaRoe.
Here.
Erica Mouter. Erica Mouter. Dan Miller.
Here.
George Montague.
Present.
Todd Schumann. Todd Schumann. Chair Jeff Strand.
Present.
Trina Stratton.
Present.
Beth Toso.
Present.
Eric Wan.
Present.
With that, I have 20 members present.
I just joined the meeting. This is John Bernstein. I'm present.
Okay, 21 members present.
21 present and then one nominee present, Mike Erlinson. Thank you. With that, we will proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access on the city's Legislative Information Management System, which is available at lims.minneapolismn.gov, sometimes called LIMS. And in the interest of time, the agenda today will approve our agenda and minutes from March 30th. We will have remarks from Mayor Jacob Fry, Council President Andrea Jenkins, and we'll review the 2021 capital guidelines and have brief member introductions of about a minute to be more familiarized with our colleagues on Click. So with that, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda and accept the March 30, 2022 minutes. When doing so, please state your name and your name after the motion and name after the second.
This is Thor. I'll make that motion.
This is
Wait a
Anna. Second.
Okay, we have that moved and seconded. Any discussion on adoption of the agenda and acceptance of the minutes? Seeing none, the clerk will call the roll.
Thor Adam.
Aye.
Zachariah Aiden.
Aye.
Jonathan On.
Aye.
Alan Beard.
Aye.
Bernstein.
Aye.
Vice Chair Willie Bridges.
Aye.
James Brown. Luke Cunningham.
Aye.
Engel.
Aye.
Amity Foster.
Aye.
Eamon Gallagher.
Aye.
William Graves.
Aye.
Hi, Goodnestad. Risa Hustad.
Aye.
Kate Jones.
Aye.
Matt Kazinka.
Aye.
Moreau.
Aye.
Erica Mounter. Dan Miller.
Aye.
George Montague.
Aye.
Schumann.
Aye.
Jeff Strand.
I vote aye.
Katrina Stratton.
Aye.
Beth Toso.
Aye.
Eric Wan.
Aye.
It's 22 ayes.
Thank you. Motion carried. We'll move on to the item 4 presentation. So I am honored and privileged today to introduce to the CLIC committee once again for our annual visit and review of the Capital Improvement Program 6-year CIP and annual capital budget recommendations process. Someone who himself served on the CLIC prior to having been elected to the city council. And so having worked with Mayor Jacob Fry as a council member, a fellow CLIC member, and now as mayor, I'm pleased to introduce Mayor Jacob Fry. And I just wanted to ask His Honor if, with the adoption of the new charter process, do we now address you as Your Excellency, or is it Mayor or Your Honor or Jacob? So welcome to the CLIC committee, and forgive my levity.
Jeff, thank you for the kinder than necessary introduction. Address me in any way that you see fit, as long as, to take the old RuPaul saying, do so with love. Jacob is just fine, though. I don't want to spend too much time giving you all a speech or any sort of prepared remarks. I want to spend most of it answering any questions that you might have. But as Mr. Strand properly and accurately referenced, I was a member of the Capital Long Range Improvement Commission, as was my wife, Sarah, for years. And the jobs that you all have and the responsibilities that you all have signed up for, they are the nuts and bolts of city government. They do help keep the city running, to make sure that the trains run on time, quite literally, that the potholes are filled, and that we are attributing proper value to things like race equity in our city, that I know that you all have followed up on extensively through our SREAP process. I understand you got an update on that last year, and the work that is already underway. So I just want to start by saying thank you. The recommendations that you put forward, they're not just some binder that sit on the shelf, they're used. In fact, the vast majority of recommendations that you put forward on an annual basis are adopted in full. Obviously, like any process, there are some areas of disagreement. There are some areas that we as elected officials, I as mayor and the city council, deem to be prioritized that didn't necessarily rise to the level of your all prioritization, and that's inevitable. But the vast majority of what you put forward, it is used. It moves forward in a recommendation, and it's ultimately enacted. A couple things that I want to just mention before we get going. The first is, I know that since 2020 that CLIC has expressed some reluctance on getting involved in a number of different public safety related matters. And we want to make sure that we're clear with you that we want to work together, that we want to help and take some of the recommendations that you're giving, and we want to provide you the full evaluation as to how our staff members come to the recommendations that they have. Second, I know that last year city staff gave a presentation on the city's strategic racial equity action plan, the goals for CLIC members, and then how that SREAP program is going to be implemented into our decision-making process at the city. We're trying to look at everything through a lens of racial equity, and obviously, even in doing so, there's disagreements as to how ultimately we get there. And then finally, there have been major changes in the last 2 years as to how the city receives and then how the city utilizes funding. We've received an extraordinary amount of federal assistance. And that federal assistance largely has not gone through the CLIC process. I just want to acknowledge that. It's in some cases required more immediate allocations of funding to accommodate the dire need that we've had in our communities through a global pandemic and 100 years in the making racial reckoning and everything else that we've been through. And so there have been moments where we've needed to, for instance, provide recommendations and then get the ARPA funding out in very quick form, which doesn't work as well with a longer form commission process. But the bottom line is that we want to make sure that wherever we can, we're taking your feedback. And something else that I'd be interested in the future is how we maybe expedite feedback where we don't have the leeway of having a full CLIC round of review. So, those are just a few areas that I wanted to talk to you about. I'm happy to take any questions that you might have. I want to thank you for your leadership in centering race equity in this work. It's important to me. It's important to the city. I want to thank you for your diligence in digging in on the recommendations that you ultimately put forward. They help a whole lot and will continue to be used. And so, Mr. Chair, I'll turn it back to you, and certainly we'll answer any questions that we might have. And I understand that we'll also be joined by our council president, Andrea Jenkins. I don't see her on here yet, but I understand she's coming shortly.
Thank you, Mayor Fry, and I do see
there. Yes, I see her.
Council President. So if it's all right with the committee and elected officials, I'll be pleased. Perhaps we'll hear from Council President Jenkins, and then we can have the Q&A together. Is that work? So I'm pleased, also honored and pleased to introduce Council President Andrea Jenkins, and I, as a longtime CLIC member, having been appointed first by the late Alice Rainville, who was a council president, and former President Barbara Johnson. I've served under 4 council members, which really isn't that huge a number, I guess, for the length of time, but I'm pleased to have worked with President Jenkins in the past, having been on the NRP and Neighborhood and Community Engagement Commission. And so I know how the Council President centers community and equity. And so I'm pleased to ask for Council President Jenkins to speak to CLIC, and then we'll do the Q&A.
Well, thank you, Chair Strand, and you can refer to me as Your Highness, but totally kidding. I'm really joking. I'm, as you noted, we have worked together in the past, and I've been involved in city government for a very long time, and have always honored and respected the commitment that members of the CLIC committee put forth to the city of Minneapolis. It's a big time commitment. It's a lot of uphill learning that has to take place in order to make the kinds of recommendations that come from the CLIC committee. As Mayor Fry noted, the vast majority of the recommendations that the CLIC committee brings forward are implemented. I think it is really critical that we have a long-term capital improvement process to really be thinking forward and future minded about how we grow as a city and how we manage that growth and how we fund that growth. And so just really appreciative of the effort that comes from all of our boards and commissions, but particularly this one, because I know the time and the commitment that you all put forward with very little recognition, certainly very little compensation. But I think it is, I know for me, it's been an honor to serve the city in any capacity that I can, and I've served on several boards and commissions related to city business as well. And so I just thank you all for your commitment. And I think there have been a number of click committee members who have gone on to seek public office, including our esteemed mayor. So you never know where this opportunity leads you. But I can't add more to what the mayor's statements. As the chair of the Race and Equity Subcommittee, I am deeply, deeply concerned about the inequities that really, unfortunately, mark our city, our beautiful city, one of the most amazing cities in the country. And it's so disturbing that we have the level of inequities that we have. And I think that the work that you guys do, because we know that a lot of the inequities in our community are infrastructure, are investment related. And so the work that you do is really important to helping address and close some of those gaps that we see in our city. And as the mayor noted, the ARPA funds, but also I think, the infrastructure funds that we are going to be, potentially receiving at the city are going to be really critical to helping to address those equity concerns as well. And so I know many of you that are serving on this board, and so glad to see your faces there. It gives me confidence that, the recommendations that you guys make are going to be really thoughtful and considerate of all the issues that we are facing. So I want to just stop there and offer up for questions along with the mayor as well.
Thank you, President Jenkins. So I know that 12:30 is sort of a hard deadline for, I believe, one of the elected officials. I'd like to ask our longtime CLIC member and vice chair, who is leading an equity subcommittee, Willie Bridges, put Willie on the spot for the first question. And you'll have to unmute.
This question is both for the mayor and President Jenkins of City Council. As you talk about equity, in what way do you see CLIC engaging in equity? Mayor?
Madam President, I'll start off and turn it over to you. I mean, I think we have to stop thinking about race equity as to something that is siloed off from decisions that happen on a daily basis in the city and start thinking about it permeating through everything that we're doing. There are race equity implications, as you all know, as to how road improvements are made, when they're made, how road improvements are prioritized, what streets get assisted first. There are equity implications as to even really little things like, what intersections are we tending to first to put a nice bright yellow coat of paint on a stoplight? I mean, these are just really micro things, but they do in fact have race equity implications in the long term. And of course, for more significant capital investment and human development programs that we want to get started, there are massive and obvious direct race equity implications. And so I think it really depends on the item. But what I can say is part of the assistance that you all offer is not just in dealing with the logistics as to how bond allocations are made, or bonding is made, but also the long-term impact of race equity. And so, yeah, I think it really depends on the specific item, but we'd be happy to get into any of the details that you might have. Madam President, do you have anything to add there? I think you might. There you go.
I'm sorry, you guys. I have my own capital project going on over here at home. I got some plumbing issues and they just showed up, so my apologies. But absolutely 100% agree with the mayor, and I think I even mentioned it, a little bit, but the infrastructure recommendations, and we talk about the inequities, right? So I see improvements in Southwest Minneapolis, in the parks, and then in the inner city, in Black and brown communities, it seems like we have less investment, or the investments are further out. And so, thinking about those kinds of things, where are the street lights being improved? How can we support those kinds of improvements in communities that are lower income and can't really come up with the resources to make those kinds of improvements? How will investments and improvements impact tax implications? So I think those are some of the areas that we can be thinking about in terms of equity.
Thank
Is
you.
that helpful?
Yes, thank you. And then I believe Eric Wan was next, and then Scott Engel.
Well, thank you, Mayor Fry and President Jenkins. Mayor Fry, I have a question, but it's more of an offer. First off, I want to thank you so much for the support you've provided to us in the past, and also the 3 points you made earlier. The one that captured me the quickest was regarding the infrastructure money that should be coming from the federal government. Between ARP and the infrastructure funds, that will be the largest infusion of capital investment funds in the history of our city. And if there's a way that we can work out a process that's outside of the annual Minneapolis budget process, so that we can provide you with input when money is available that's off cycle, I know we would be glad to work with your team to come up with a process to include the CLIC staff and the CLIC members to support you in your work.
Thank you for the offer, and that's really helpful. So we won't be able to do that with ARPA Phase 2. So I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver here. ARPA Phase 2 will likely be seeing recommendations coming from my office later this month. We'll then have some public hearing and community engagement and feedback then, and then the council will ultimately make final decisions on a timeline that they ultimately set. And so it is a fair request. It's one that I offered, but I just want to be clear, that won't be available for ARP around Phase 2. Now, we will have infusions of cash that are coming in other forms. I think the most obvious one is the federal transportation and infrastructure dollars that we hope to have coming in very large amounts. I don't know what sort of process that's ultimately going to take and what form of restrictions and requirements will come along with that money. But, I think having some form of expedited process would be helpful. CLIC is in and of itself an engagement body. It is a way to get direct input from the community at large. And you all are indeed representatives from wards or the mayor's office in doing so. And so I think that there might be some opportunities there. And so as we get some of the federal guidance on those transportation dollars, let's make sure we loop back.
Great, thank you, Mayor.
Yeah, no, thank you, Eric, for that that offer, and I think it is going to come in really importantly as we really start to distribute and plan for these infrastructure dollars. It's going to be critical. And, you know, as the mayor said, we don't know exactly what kinds of restrictions or conditions that are going to be there. But we do know that the president's goal, and I think the goal of the Secretary of Transportation has been really clear that equity has to be at the forefront of those investments. And so it's going to be critical for this body as well as the council and the mayor to ensure that that's what's happening. So thank you for that offer. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Then Commissioner Scott Engel and then Commissioner Amity Foster.
Yes, hello, Mayor and City Council President. I wanted to talk to you about the Americans with Disabilities Act transition plan. The city's Public Works Department just approved their plan after 30 years, 2 years ago, and they just came out in early March with a 2-year sort of review of it. And I'm still shocked at how far behind the city is on removing barriers for people with disabilities. And on the click, I've been on the click for 2 years now. I found that the requests that they are putting forth to us don't seem to match up with the extreme need for catching up. And so I just am hoping that perhaps maybe the department needs more expertise in the Americans with Disabilities Act law, how to move it forward. I think in their new transition plan review, they are going to ask for staff this year, but on your end, I'm hoping you can kind of keep this sort of as an issue to pay attention to, because the law was passed in 1990 and the city is not very far along on this. And even just as an example for the pedestrian ramps, the current review says it's going to take another 30 years to actually replace the ramps. So that's a long time. And that doesn't even address the other accessibility barriers in sidewalks and intersections and so forth. So.
Mr. Scott Engel, fair points. This is an area where we have needed to expedite things far faster than is presently taking place, and that's not just out of a call for more moral decision-making and how we respect and work with our communities that have disabilities. It's also just a law. And as you well know, and because I know you were a staunch advocate on it, with these are areas where we've quite literally been sued in the past and have not properly upheld the conditions that we should be promising. And so you're right. I will be working with our public works staff to see how we can further expedite these layouts, whether they be ramps or anything, or sidewalks or anything else. And I hear you, and you're right. And please continue the advocacy that you've been providing.
And I just add, as a person living with a disability that impacts my mobility, I am deeply concerned about these issues as well. So, yeah.
Thank you. Then Commissioner Amity Foster is next, and then Katie Jones.
Thank you, Chair Strand. Mayor Fry, this is for you specifically. So this is the first year that the departments submitting CBRs need to fill out the racial equity impact analysis, like to do it intentionally, the one that was created through the Division of Race and Equity. And I am a little concerned that not all of them are going to do that, and that some of them are going to do it with a lag. We don't know. The data's not out there. The city needs to do better. So I'm curious to what you see your role being in enforcing that and holding departments accountable. If racial equity is a priority for the city and all of our goals, it needs, like, the enforcement and accountability around that needs to come from leadership. So I'd love to hear more about that.
It's a good question, and the answer is that the role has changed dramatically in the last several months here. Previously, we had the race equity division sitting, and we still do, it's sitting in the coordinator's office. Now, the coordinator's office has had the ability to coordinate, but there wasn't the ability to give explicit directions and then have those directions followed. And so the mayor and the city council, we could provide all of the statements that possibly can about the value of race equity and the value of looking at things through this lens and making decisions in the forms based on through this lens. And I'll tell you, in budgetary decisions, we have in previous years going back to 2018 even, my office has required department heads to put forward a race equity impact analysis when they put their budget recommendations to me specifically. I don't know how that works with respect to CLIC. The CLIC may have, our recommendations to CLIC may have lagged on that. We own that. But the difference now is that we can not just have coordination of the race equity goals and the race equity division, but we can require that those asks are built into the process. And there's a big, big difference there. And so our ability to coordinate is far superior than it was before. Now, I'll also tell you, just so that, again, I'm not over-promising and under-delivering, getting this new structure of government set up was going to take time. As of right now, we have the reporting structure has changed, but the new, the individuals in place largely have not. And so what I mean by that is, as of December 3rd, there's like 23 or 24 people that report directly to me. That's also not workable. I'm of the opinion that it didn't work well before. It also doesn't work well now as it sits. And so what we need to move forward as quickly as possible with is getting the right people in place so that we are able to better vertically manage. And I think that'll have a huge impact on race equity. It's something that I've talked with Taisha Green about, who is our new race equity head that just joined the city last week, I believe. And it's something that we're going to be working together on.
Thank you, Mayor. So we have 2 more questions in queue, and I think based on the time frame, we'll have to limit to that. So Commissioner Katie Jones and then Commissioner John Bernstein.
Yes, hi. Thank you, Mayor and Council President, for joining us today. I really appreciate this conversation around equity and want to note the progression of equity in our city. I think a lot about transit as a key component of having like equity in our infrastructure system. Obviously, the city doesn't own the buses and the trains, but we own the right of way. And it's, there's been this long-term progression of cities supporting that. Decades ago, we created Nicollet as a bus and pedestrian space. Then Second and Marquette became bus spaces. Then the Blue Line, then the Green Line, taking city right-of-way for that more equitable access. Then pilot bus lanes from Chicago and Hennepin and Nicollet, and now even in downtown, I believe 7th has a dedicated lane. And so, you also mentioned the topic of equity, that specifics are important, and CLIC has recommended that the city move forward with the Hennepin Avenue South project. As I've been talking about, transit is key for vulnerable populations, undocumented immigrants who can't get a license, low-income folks, people with disabilities, so they can get around. Scott also talked about the need to catch up on making our streets more accessible and making sure they're ADA, making infrastructure more accessible. Given this and the natural progression of transit, with regards to equitable access throughout the city, was curious why this layout for the project has not yet moved forward, and if we're going to see true equity when it comes to transit on this street. I understand that Click's role may, stop really at our comments and our recommendations, but we do have an interest in seeing these equitable outcomes in the operations for the projects we recommend.
Yeah, I can't give you the exact timeline as to when the council vote will take place, but it is coming soon. And so the recommendations that are going to ultimately be baked in, I do think it's important that you have drastic changes to how that street presently functions. I agree that it's good to have bus-only lanes, specifically on that time, simply because we believe it could drastically increase a person's likelihood of taking public transit and drastically increase a person's access to public transit. So that's my position generally. Obviously, like anything, yeah, we do need to also account for the numerous small local businesses that are on that corridor. And I say that unapologetically. That's something that we absolutely have to do. That's part of equity. But that doesn't mean that we sacrifice climate goals and accessibility goals in getting there. And so I do believe that it's moving forward to council in the coming, I can't give you an exact date, but it's soon. I think we can get to a real win situation.
Thank you. And last question for Transportation Chair John Bernstein.
Thanks, Jeff. Hi, Jacob. It's nice to see you again. Andrea, I don't think we've met, but thank you for joining us. I just wanted to share sort of a 30,000-foot view concern that I've had for several years now, and I think it piggybacks well on what Scott just shared, but it's even broader than that. I think I have a real concern that at current funding levels, the city has more infrastructure than it can maintain on a timely basis. There was a fairly strong attempt to address that as it relates to parks and streets with that ordinance that was enacted now 6 years ago. So the clock's running on that. That runs out in 14 years, which, for elected officials, that's many lifetimes, right? But in the history of the city, that's not all that long till that's gone. And I acknowledge that a lot of the fixes to this problem are, for lack of a better way to put it, political third rails, right? I mean, a lot of the solutions are things that are not politically popular things to do. But the reality is, because I don't think we're going to shrink the infrastructure of the city, that's not the solution. The solution is we need more funding. As I'm sure, Jacob, you're aware, and many others that have been around for a while, there were some significant changes at the turn of the century in the way the state funds at the local level. And that changed this. At the time that the Parks and Streets Ordinance went into effect, Public Works showed a citywide street condition average, and it had been on a decline for something, if I recall correctly, it was at least 10 years, if not 15. I highly doubt we've reversed that. We've probably slowed it or maybe stabilized it. So the problem hasn't gone away. And I'd just love to see some really long-range thinking about how to fix this problem on a more permanent basis from the city. And to the extent that it would be useful for CLIC to have some kind of a subcommittee of people that could try to advise on this, I'd be happy to be a part of something like that. And I've just been interested to hear your thoughts on this, Jacob.
This is an issue that is not new for you raising, Mr. John Bernstein. I think every single time we've met, and this is to your credit, this is a matter that you've brought up. And I think what you accurately point out is it's not just about the funding, which has already been allocated. This is one of the rare issues where it's not as much a matter of resource, but more a matter of personnel and ability to contract in a quickly basis to get some of these projects rolled out and done. One of the things that we've asked our new public works director to get on as quickly as possible is to figure out a better action plan to further expedite some of, for instance, the street projects that we already have planned, that you already have approved, that we have money that's already readily allocated to. The question is, how do we get them done faster? I think that's the primary question. And I mean, it's not limited to streets either. I mean, we also have a backlog of streetlights, for instance, that need to be replaced. And to I think all of our chagrin, it's not like, in many cases, it's not like you just go up and replace the light bulb. It's more like the from what I understand, Christmas tree lights, how they work. I'm Jewish, so I never really put up Christmas tree lights, but my understanding is that it's the kind of idea where if one goes out, they all go out. And so it requires a more significant overhaul in how we're dealing with the matter. And so that's happening. It is being expedited. Yes, we would value your input on it. And I'll consult with staff as to see how best we can get your assistance and expertise in expediting some of these. And Andrea, if you could just make a note of that, that'd be helpful.
Thank you.
All right. Amity, was your hand new or?
It is. This
Or-
is a question for
okay.
John. Which ordinance were you referring to?
The Parks and Streets ordinance that was put in as a stopgap measure to increase funding on a temporary, quote, temporary 20-year basis to get streets and parks back up to snuff.
Got it. Thank you.
Well, very good. I thought I saw Council President Jenkins had to leave at 12:34. And Mayor Fry, thank you for spending so much time with us today. And if there are more questions and you have more time, but I don't see any others, and we do have a bit more business today. So
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time and your work, and looking forward to your recommendations and working in partnership. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, moving the agenda, next item is to have another review of 2021 CLIC capital guidelines by finance and property services staff. For new and returning members, it usually doesn't hurt to repeat concepts and training. So segue to finance and property services.
All right. Well, thank you. And I'm really going to cover really like the project priority and the qualitative criteria areas mostly. So Justin, if you mind going to the next slide. But altogether, this is the evaluation system adopted by the City Council and Mayor. It's out of 300 points. We run to the next one. There you go. So for project priorities, these are broken down. So level of need. I just wanted to dive into these definitions a little bit more. So critical, this is the 51 to 65 point range. Describes a capital proposal as indispensable and demanding attention due to an immediate need or public endangerment. Few projects can qualify for this high of a classification, and failure to fund a critical project generally will result in suspension of the municipal service to minimize risk to the public. So that's that top layer. Then significant is the 41 to 50 point range. So that's describes a capital project or a capital proposal deemed to have a high priority in addressing a need or service as previously indicated by policymakers or submitting agency priority rankings. Yeah, you can move on to the next slide. And then moving down again, so important, this is the 26 to 40 point range. This describes a capital proposal addressing a pressing need that can be evaluated as a standalone project. Proposals may be considered important if they're required to maintain an expected standard of service, achieve equity in service delivery, or increase some efficiency in providing public services. And so the last definition we have is the desirable, the 0 to 25 point range. So this describes a capital proposal that would provide increased public benefits, enhancement of municipal services, or other upgrading of public infrastructure. Failure to fund a desirable project would not immediately impair current municipal services. So now in that qualitative criteria section, which is also out of 100 points, we have equity. So this is between 0 and 25 points. And the definition for this is it extends that proposal meets the city's definition of and furtherance of equity policies. That extent that a proposal serves to reverse disparate trends, eliminates barriers, and provides outcomes and opportunities for all people that are no longer predicted by their protected class. So there's other city definitions. So in our strategic racial equity action plan that Amelia kind of talked about in our last presentation, racial equity is defined as the development of policies, practices, and strategic investments to reverse racial disparity trends, eliminate institutional racism, and ensure that outcomes and opportunities for all people are no longer predictable by race. I just put this in here as a note. That top definition is what is actually in the capital guidelines right now. So environmental sustainability, this is 0 to 15 points. The extent proposal is consistent with the adopted climate action plans, will reduce greenhouse gas emissions, improve the health of our natural environment, and incorporate sustainable design, energy efficiency, and economically viable and sound construction practices. Yeah, there you go. The next qualitative criteria is that capital cost, collaboration, and leveraging public and or private investment. So 0 to 15 points. The extent proposal delivers consistently high quality city services at a good value to taxpayers. And extend the proposal reflects collaboration between 2 or more public or private public-private organizations to more effectively and efficiently attain common goals, and for which costs can be met with non-city funds or generate private investment in the city. So qualitative criteria 4. So this is public benefit and customer service delivery. This is 15 points. An extent proposal directly benefits a portion of the city's population by providing certain services or facilities, and extends proposal delivery, or excuse me, proposal delivery is consistently high quality with an infrastructure investment that is appropriately sized for effective service delivery. Thank you. Neighborhood livability, public engagement, and community life. Also out of 15 points, the extent proposal serves to preserve or improve the quality, safety, and security of neighborhoods in order to retain and attract residents. Extent development of proposal meaningfully engages community members consistent with the city's adopted principles of community engagement. And then qualitative criteria 6, this is the effect on tax base, job creation, technological and cultural implications out of 15 points. Extent proposal can be expected to preserve or increase the city's property tax base through support for community development activities or projects, and serves as a catalyst for job creation by the private sector. Extent that the proposal would strengthen or expand technological innovation, connectivity, and efficiency, or enhance educational, cultural, architectural, or historic preservation opportunities. Is that the last line? Oh yeah. So that was just the that was the project priority and the qualitative criteria, both which are at about 100. And Jeff, I don't know if you wanted me to cover anything else with the capital guidelines. I think that was the original request.
That's correct. We're just repeating part of the process to try to hit on those principles multiple times.
Great.
Any comments, questions, or discussion? I see John.
I was just going to try to add something that hopefully helps people out with that. It's a ton of information, right? And you think about, if I were coming to this for the first time, I would go to the CBRs and I would expect to be able to find fairly specific information that addressed all the things that you just heard. And the reality is that while that's true in some cases, it's less true in other cases. And it's not necessarily the fault of the person that filled it out. It just doesn't necessarily explicitly address all of those things. So it's incumbent on all of us to do, I think, 2 things, and others may want to chime in with their own thoughts on this. One is ask questions when we get that opportunity to flesh out anything like that where you feel like you don't have enough information to make a judgment. And the other is to just think about it yourself and decide whether that's the kind of project that encourages more development, that has is meritorious from an environmental sustainability perspective, that sort of thing. A lot of it you just have to sort of make your own judgment about, I think is the way I would put it. If anybody wants to share their own thoughts on that, I just thought that might be helpful for people, that it's not all, you're not going to find every answer to this stuff explicitly in the CBR.
I would concur with what John was saying about it's so important to ask questions about that when you're scoring it. We have these department heads presenting their stuff to us, so to speak. And at that time, you can ask questions about what it is that they're doing, how they're going to do it. And as John talked about and the mayor talked about earlier, some of these projects, we put money in there and they're coming back and they haven't spent the money that we've given. So ask questions, ask questions, ask questions. especially if you don't understand, you need some clarification.
If I might add, it's not necessary to ask the question at the time we meet with the department heads. If you have any other questions after the department heads, that the staff Neil et al. Have been really helpful in getting questions to the right person in the department. So I would use those contacts, Neil and his group.
Let's go to Dan Miller next.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm really appreciative of how the things are going on SharePoint and the advanced information on the what you put together and sent out in the email. I was just asking, would like to ask that the capital guidelines get put into the 2022 folder on the SharePoint, so we have that there. Thanks.
Yep, we can add that there.
Okay. Not seeing any other comments. So then on my printed agenda, I had the member introductions next, but I see on this I have announcements. So
yeah, I was gonna see if maybe it makes sense to do 2 brief announcements before we move to the member introductions, because I assume that'll kind of take us to the end of time.
Yeah, let's do that. So Community Connections Conference sign up. So there's a doodle form that's been sent out for people on Click to sign up for the Saturday, May 21st Neighborhood and Community Relations City of Minneapolis Community Connections Conference. Probably as a first time ever for the Click Committee. The conference has been going on for quite a few years. I can't say exactly how long, but I know that I was on the Neighborhood and Community Engagement Commission when it was started. It's a great opportunity to mingle with residents and cultural community organization members and neighborhood organizations citywide. So please visit the doodle form. And then I seem to be having some audio problem. Neil, do you want to cover the CBR item?
Yeah, so I was going to say I think you sent an email out on Friday, but right now the Art in Public Places CBR is posted, as well as the Park Board. They're our next, they're doing their Q&A session beginning next week. So their presentations and their CBRs are posted right now. We are still in the process of, I think I mentioned this before, but we're doing a bigger review process with departments. So we've given a little more feedback, asking them to flesh out some answers a little bit more. And so we're still receiving some of that. I think the deadline is today. We're getting a little bit more information back from them. And then we will hopefully have a majority of them posted and their presentations by this Friday. So we're pretty close to having most of the department or the submitting agencies, CBRs and presentations online.
Thank you. John?
Just a quick request that I've made before, and it seems like an opportune time to do it since we're about to do introductions. I found over the years that of the 33 people on this committee, we have a tremendous amount of expertise, and it can take quite a while to know what each person's area of expertise is. It can take the better part of a Click season or several of them as people ask questions and you sort of figure it out. And I've thought for years it would be useful to have a little cheat sheet where we each have a very small 3 to 5 sentence bio that says a few things personally about you and what you do for work, to help all of us know where others' area of expertise is. I find myself tending to defer to somebody that's got real expertise on IT or environmental sustainability because they know a lot more about it than me. And when they ask questions, I kind of perk up, and it's just useful. So in the spirit of, if you want something done, do it yourself, if it's all right with Jeff, I will volunteer to assemble that if people are willing to email me something. And to start it off, I'm willing to circulate my own bio as a sort of a sample. That sound all right, Jeff? And just one last thing, it's intended to be internal use only. It's not intended to be a public document.
I think it's all right, John. It's not something that city staff has capacity to undertake coordinating, and as long as it's not in the, for the way you describe it, it's not in the manner of a chainmail for policy discussion. So I think it passes muster and would be fine for people on Click to voluntarily send a bio to you if that's the choice, and then we can share it internally. But I know with all the things going on, city staff can't really coordinate it. But yes. So then in the member introductions, and we can, let's say that if we take the remaining part of the remaining time today, and there's nothing wrong with finishing our meeting early, we've run late. I'm sure we're all very busy people. And so, you know, a minute or two, if you would like to give any high points of your personal or professional background that you'd like to share with Click colleagues, and we can just, stack is hard to manage, but I'll just say maybe John, if you want to lead, and then you can just call on the next person, or if anyone has to leave early.
Sure. So I'm John Bernstein. If I've counted correctly, this is my 16th year on Click. I represent the 7th Ward. I was appointed by Lisa Goodman, so I've served a single council member. I've been Transportation Task Force Chair for quite some time now. I'm not exactly sure how long. Let's see, what else? I run my own financial advisory business. I've been in the investment business my entire career. Left a larger firm about 6 years ago and started my own firm. And I have 4 kids, 1 out of college, 2 in college, and 1 in high school. And let's see, Thor, how about you go next?
Sure. Thor Adam, Ward 6. Been in Ventura Village or the Phillips neighborhood for the last 25 years. I maintenance work and sometimes fill in for people when they're on vacation at the Wellness Hardware, which is a long four family generation hardware store, which I really love and support a lot. And I also have 3 adult children, and they no longer live in the home with me. Empty nester. So that's it. And I'm going to go to Amity.
I'm Amity Foster. My pronouns are she, her. I am in my day job. I'm the data manager at Isaiah and Faith in Minnesota. So if you want to talk about leadership development and building power, let's do that. I live in Ward 3. I'm in the Sheridan neighborhood, and I was appointed by Steve Fletcher and now Michael Rainville. I care deeply about public transit and how we move people around our city and how we can do better at that. I will pass to George.
Hi, everybody. I'm George Montague. I'm a mayoral appointment, although I live in Ward 7. I lived in the Twin Cities for 12 years now, but have lived in, probably 5 of the top 6 largest cities in the U.S. as well as London. So have a good visibility, had good visibility about some of the things that cities do well and not so well. And I think that we have a lot to be proud of, but also a lot to work on here in Minneapolis, and view Click as a way to contribute and help doing that. By day, I'm CFO for a medical device company and been working for various tech-oriented companies my whole career in finance or operating roles. And I'll pass it to Scott. Scott Engel, who's on mute.
Sorry about that.
Oh, there we go, Scott. Perfect.
Yeah, sorry about that. My screen went off. But anyways, my name is Scott Engel. I live in the 12th Ward in the Standish neighborhood. I was appointed by Andrew Johnson. I previously served on the Pedestrian Advisory Committee for about 5 years in the from 2010 to 2016, something like that. And I've been very involved with pedestrian advocacy. I work for the South Uptown Neighborhood Association as the executive coordinator. And as you may have noticed, I am also a disability advocate, sort of just amateur, but I'm a blind person and experience the city and have taken an interest in how to make it more accessible for all people. I'm not sure.
Scott, did Katie have to leave? She may have left. If she didn't, she probably should go next.
Katie?
I think she left.
Okay, I think she had to leave and she put her info in the chat.
I'll go next. I'm Willie Bridges. I'm in the 11th Ward. I have been president of Phil Regina North Neighborhood for about 6, 7, almost 8 years, actually. And I work in the county attorney's office. I'm their senior planning analyst. I talk with families and make recommendations where kids should be placed and what programs. I'm a single parent. I have a grandson. I have a son, and I have 3 grandkids. That keeps me going. But anyway, Luke.
All right, thank you. Luke Cunningham, he, him. I live in Ward 12, an Andrew Johnson appointee, and this is my second year on Click. I work at Quality Bicycle Products, so the owner of Surly, Salsa, All City, a bunch of other brands on the e-commerce team. So working on building up the platform that bike retailers around the country use to purchase all kinds of bike products. I have 2 daughters, a 3-year-old and a 6-month-old, and so my work from home life is hectic and exciting. Next, I see Rich LaRoe. Have you gone?
Sorry, just a meeting. Yeah, my name's Rich. I live in the Fulton neighborhood, Ward 13. I was appointed by Lina Palmisano. This is my second year on Click. I started life in biotech research. I did that for about 15 years. And then I spent most of the last 20 years doing IT systems administration, website support, et cetera, some customer support there. What else? I will hand it off to Beth Toso.
Thanks, Rich. Hi, I'm Beth Toso, and I'm representing Ward 2, and it is my second year on Click, so I'm still trying to figure it out. And I have, let's see, I've lived in the city for over 30 years, over a couple of stints, raised 2 kids here, very familiar with the park system. I raised 2 very active soccer players. Let's see what else. My career, my entire career has been in finance, but in a lot of different roles, both for a large corporation in downtown Minneapolis, and more recently, the last decade, I've spent in the nonprofit sector, but never worked in government finance. So this is a very interesting experience. But I do spend a lot of my time doing budgeting and planning in my professional life. So I thought this might be a good way to volunteer for the city. That's about it. And is there somebody on the phone that would like to go? I don't see names though by the phone numbers.
I can go. I'm not. I'm just on the call like everyone else. My name is Todd Schumann. I'm a mayoral appointee. He, him. I live in Ward 13 in the Fulton neighborhood. I have let's see, we've lived here for about 10 years now. And I am actually an at-home parent for my 2 kiddos who are 7 and 4. But in my past life, I was an engineer. So I did a lot of work both on the technical side and also in program management. So looking at budgets and personnel stuff and things like that. So this has been a great way for me to keep my brain working while at home, still doing stuff with numbers and projects and things. And so I've loved interacting with all the folks on this committee and with the departments and just learning a lot more about how the city works and doing my best to contribute to, I think my passions would be in equity and public safety. So those are the areas that I tend to lean more towards. So let's see, I'll turn it over to, I can't really see live, Kai Goodmanstead. Is he on today? I'll just toss it up because I only see about 6 people on the screen, all of whom have gone.
I think I will hop on because I similarly have a hard stop deadline. My name is Risa. I live in the 11th ward, and I work in the bike industry. I work in sales and international distribution, and I primarily work in last mile planning within the city of Minneapolis and in the larger metro. And I'm going to go ahead and try to pop it to Eamon.
Hi, thank you. And that was a perfect pronunciation. My name is Eamon Gallagher. I use he, him. I'm an attorney and researcher. I worked at the state legislature, staffing their state government finance, local government, and pensions committees. I'm currently an attorney at the General Counsel's Office at the Department of Commerce. So kind of given my background, my areas of interest are mostly kind of economic development and local finance. I live in the Corcoran neighborhood and am also a mayoral appointee. And has Eric gone yet? I can pass it to him.
Thank you, Eamon. Eric Wan, I'm in Ward 4 on the north side, a mayoral appointment. I've been retired for 8 years now. You can tell I'm counting them. 8 years, I spent 25 years with the federal government in the White House Budget Office from President Jimmy Carter, got to work with Mr. Mondale, and retired under President Obama. Currently, I do a lot of work, volunteer work in the city, and probably what takes most of my time right now is I sit on a group called the Unity Community Mediation Team, which is negotiating an agreement between the police department, the police union, and the community. So that's twice a week for several hours. We're trying to come up with an agreement on how policing will proceed into the immediate future. And with that, I will pass it to Katrina Stratton. Kitty, are you there?
Yep.
Great.
I'm Katrina Stratton. I'm also in Ward 4. I'm retired for 4 years. So my profession, and actually what I do now, is consulting for super energy efficient, net zero, sustainable, carbon neutral housing, affordable projects, residential, because I'm an architect, and it's, I wish everybody could live utility free like I do. So that's what I do. And you know what? This click takes up a lot of time, just for those that need to know. Yeah, so it kind of pushes into my travel time. And then let's see, I will, Jocelyn.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jocelyn Beard. I am a mayoral appointee. I have been on CLIC, I think this is my 4th year. Not really sure. I would agree with Kitty. It takes up a lot of time, but it does feel beneficial. I am the community relations manager at Tubman, nonprofit that has been around over 45 years, supporting people that experience addiction, trauma. Most people know us for our shelter around and for domestic violence. So we do a lot of things. My passion is around equity, diversity and inclusion, and access, and also around community engagement for those that don't have the time to be in meetings like this. I think that's all. I'm married to a great guy that works at Restoration Hardware. So if you like lobster rolls and you go to Smack Shack, they have one that competes. Anyway, anyway, I will pass. Why can't I see the hands up? I'll pass it to William Graves.
Hey everybody, I am Bill Graves. I am a 9th Ward appointee, and that is where I work as president of my family's foundation, the Graves Foundation. I live in Ward 1 and I've lived in Northeast Minneapolis for the last 15 or 20 years. So my day job is supporting incredible nonprofits so that every young person in our community can thrive. And I think the physical infrastructure of the city is important either support or barrier to that. And so I wanted to be involved with this to understand how our city institutions are supporting young people. And I want to bring that voice to this committee. And I will pass it over to Jonathan Ahn.
Thank you, everyone. Again, my name is Jonathan Ahn. I was appointed by then Ward 10 Council Member, Council President Bender. This is my 2nd year with CLIC. Actually, my first full year because I joined mid-cycle last year. My day job is I'm a trained city planner, and I work for Metro Transit as a project manager for Bus Rapid Transit BRT operations. But I'm participating CLIC as a private resident of Minneapolis. I am, just like most of everyone here on CLIC members, passionate about mobility and making our city more accessible to more people, and transit accessibility is some of the things that I'm really excited about, and I'm really looking forward to working with everyone and learning more about young and new members and people who have more experience with CLIC all together and learn more lessons from them. Yeah, great to meet you, everyone. And I think I forgot to call someone after. I'm going to call Zachariah Aiden.
Hi, everyone. My name is Zach Aiden. Currently live in Ward 3. Have been living in Northeast Minneapolis for most of my life. Currently working in deal strategy at Visa. Prior to that, I worked in financial consulting at both Accenture and Deloitte. Have a real passion for nonprofits and community organizing. I currently serve on another nonprofit based in the Northeast area. So if you guys are interested in ever talking about engaging community, that's an interest of mine. So I'd be happy to kind of provide some of my insight on that piece as well. But happy to be part of the team. This is also my 2nd year on CLIC. I pass the baton to Erica.
Hey everybody, my name's Erica Motter, she, her. I live in Ward 6 in the Phillips West neighborhood. This is my 6th year on CLIC, so I did 1 4-year stint as a mayoral appointee, took a little break, and now I'm back as a Ward 6 appointee. I work for a national progressive advocacy organization, but I also have a background in chemical engineering, worked in the food and pharmaceutical industries for quite a while, so that makes the streets and sewer projects particularly interesting to me, but I do also share an interest in the equity and public safety considerations as well. And I will hand it to Dan Miller.
Good morning, good afternoon. My name's Dan Miller. I represent Ward 1. It is will be completing my 2nd term on CLIC this year. and was appointed by Kevin Reich. And my current council member is Council Member Elliot Payne. Let's see, I'm retired from the Science Museum where I was an exhibit production manager, producing exhibits. And upon my retirement, which now is 6 years, I got antsy and was helping out my neighborhood. I currently live in Wyndham Park in Ward 1, but prior to that, I lived both in Phillips and the north side. So I had a lot of community involvement in each of those neighborhoods and kind of carried that through. And I started reading a lot about the city and the transportation and reading a lot of CLIC reports and capital budget requests. And my council member asked if I would join this committee. So I think that's it. Thank you. And I will pass it on to Mike Erlinson.
Good afternoon, everybody. It's Mike Erlinson, and I look forward to joining you guys. As was called out, I'm a guest today, appointed by Lisa Goodman here in the 7th Ward, but waiting the process with the City Council. So looking forward to rolling up my sleeves and trying to figure this out. I've interesting to hear all the new people say it's a little more confusing than one might think, but a little bit of background. One way or another, I've spent my entire life working for Minneapolis. I graduated from college, ended up in Washington, D.C., spent almost 20 years there where I worked for a member of Congress, Martin Sabo, who had represented the city and the surrounding suburbs for a long time. So longtime advocate, moved back to Minnesota, have lived in the East Isles neighborhood for almost 25 years now, raised 2 kids here, one still in high school, been active on the East Isles Neighborhood Association, been active on a number of other community groups, even spent 6 years as the state DFL party chair. So I've done public policy and politics for better or for worse. My wife and I today have a public affairs firm where we represent a number of clients in the communications and government relations space, both in Washington, D.C. and in Minnesota. Clients range from nonprofit organizations like the Great Plains Institute to big public entities like Ramsey County. So I've been involved in the budget space in many different capacities for a long time. Look forward to getting to know you all and working with you. And let's see, there's hands, but no names associated with them on my screen here. So maybe Matt is still yet to go. So.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, everyone. Matt Kazinka. I live in the Corcoran neighborhood, been here for about 10 years. So that's Ward 9, was appointed by former council member Alondra Cano. And I'm just in my second year. I work for the Lake Street Council, which supports, it's a nonprofit that supports the small businesses here on Lake Street. We've been doing a lot of work focused on just the community recovery over the last couple of years since the murder of George Floyd and the uprising. But I also have some background doing, or a lot of the projects I've done have been around sustainability in small businesses. How do we help folks get access to energy efficiency, solar, better recycling systems, and more broadly, this is my interest in CLIC too, is how do we improve the transportation infrastructure here so that it's safer for people to get to their favorite businesses, whether they're driving or walking or taking the bus and biking. So that's a big interest of mine. I'm also on the treasurer for the Corcoran Neighborhood Board. So really supportive of the work that they've been doing around equity and community safety, and the Midtown Farmers Market was moving back to its now permanent Farmers Market Plaza at Hiawatha and Lake in about a month. So excited for that. Thanks.
Thanks, Matt. Thanks, everyone. Have we completed everyone who's on the phone or in the meeting? We can't see the names on phone, so did 388-9592, did you go?
I think we're missing 4. Andrea, can you?
Yeah, I'll go last, and then we're going to go into our concluding remarks and adjourn. So I don't want to miss anyone. So I'll go last then, unless someone else is jumping in, or if we want city staff. So Jeffrey Strand, he, him, pronouns. I've been a city resident for 44 years, of which 35 years I've been married to or joined with my husband. And so my passions have been public engagement, community engagement, public policy. I have recently retired as a property tax administrator for 42 years with the local government. However, in that role, I had the opportunity, sort of unusual for a tax collector, to deal with about a dozen tax forfeit polluted Superfund sites, home rehab programming, and human service navigation programs. So that's my area of expertise with the County Auditor Treasurer Finance statewide organization. I have served on the neighborhood board in Shingle Creek in Northwest Minneapolis, where I live since 1992, and was appointed by the late Council President Alice Rainville circa 1996 and served under 4 council members. My public policy aspect, I'm currently the chair of the DFL Party Senate District 59 and Congressional District 5, and a director on the DFL Rural Caucus. So like one other member, I have great interest in the Democratic Farmer Labor Party in the state of Minnesota, as well as this nonpartisan public engagement work. And I really feel that we need to make sure that we have an equitable citywide, but sustainable, both from a structural and financial standpoint, having been on the committee when we looked at the infrastructure gaps following the flooding and with the waterworks and other public facilities, making sure that we have structurally equitable and financially sustainable infrastructure programming for the city for the long term. Anyone else that we missed, or do we want to hear from we have a few minutes for finance staff if they'd like to go.
I can start. I'm Neil Younghans, he, him. I joined the city in 2020. I came from the state of Minnesota, where I worked for the Department of Human Services in their fraud division. And before that, I worked for the Minnesota Department of Transportation. And I was a 2016 Humphrey graduate. I've always been interested in like state and local finance and public infrastructure. I'll hand it to Amelia.
Great, thank you, Neil. I'm Amelia Kruger. I'm the budget director for the city of Minneapolis. I've lived in the cities for about 12 years now. I moved here to go to the Humphrey School, same as Neil, and stayed. I came to the city from the state budget office. So I worked at Minnesota Management and Budget for about 6 years, mostly as their education finance budget officer. But in the last few years, I managed a portfolio that included revenues, corrections, the judicial branch, as well as higher education. So that's my experience. I also have a 4- and 7-year-old, the oldest one in public schools here in Minneapolis, and I live in Ward 8. And I will toss it. I don't know if Justin's around, but I'll toss it to you.
I am. Thank you, Amelia. I'm Justin Carlson. I'm a budget and evaluation analyst in the finance department. I joined the budget office this past September, so fairly new to finance and property services. Prior to that, I spent the last 8 years at the Minneapolis Convention Center, so not new to the city, but new to this aspect of budgeting work. My portfolio I support is our city management portfolio, so primarily working with city coordinator's office and many of the city coordinator departments, including communications, HR, internal audit, IGR, and finance, in addition to the assessor's office, city clerk, council, elections, and mayor's office. My work with finance is specifically why I'm here supporting Neil and the rest of the budget office team in the work of CLIC. So I look forward to meeting all of you when I joined this team temporarily last year on just a short-term detail, and thankful that this work has continued and I get to be a part of it. I do have an almost 3-year-old daughter and a nearly 1-year-old son, so they are keeping me busy these days as well. I will pass it back to Chair Strand.
Thanks, everyone. Well, we've come to that time. With that, we've completed all items on the agenda for this meeting. We'll ask members and staff if there are any other matters.
Excuse
Pardon?
me, there's one other person, Andrea, the other staff person, intern.
Okay. Okay, great. Let's do that then.
Hi there. I'm just a guest staff today, but since I was here, I wanted to introduce myself. I'm Andrea Inoue. I'm with the mayor's office. So joined today because he joined today. My professional expertise is mostly in affordable housing, finance, and policy, but I am working closely with the budget office on the budget this year for the mayor's office. So thank you for all your work.
Very good. Thank you. Personal note, I will be having knee replacement surgery on April 18th. So if for any reason I'm not able to attend virtually, which I expect to be able to, you'll see Vice Chair Bridges here in my stead. With that, we've completed all items on the agenda for this meeting. I will ask members and staff if there are any other matters to come before this meeting. Seeing not, if not, and without objection, I'll declare this meeting adjourned at the conclusion of the task force, or I'm sorry, I will declare this meeting adjourned, period. Our next meeting will be Wednesday, April 13, 2022 at 12 noon. Thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you. Bye.
See you next time.